Phil Dixon and another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Hey, I hope everybody's still following me, and I just want to come on and talk a little bit tonight. I will say I do have one of my followers here, Dave Kemp out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, had a stroke earlier this year, and so we're wishing Dave a, um, a great comeback. So it's Dave Kemp out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Been knowing him for over 40 years, and a great historian. Had done some wonderful work. We did some interesting things together many years ago on the Algona Brownies and John Donaldson. This is way before anybody else was working on this, so just know that we did some things on John Donaldson, and I used to go up in that part of the country, and we were the ones who broke the story on Dave Brown masquerading as Lefty Wilson, all the things that you hear about that happen up in that part of the country. A lot of that started with myself and Dave Kemp. So, Dave, wish you a speedy recovery there. And so, hey, right now we're going to go ahead and get busy with our history lesson tonight. All right. This is the September 3rd, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Of course, this is the Black History Month edition. And I always have to remind people here at this channel, Black History is 365 days a year. So this is a place where you can never cancel out our history, because we're going to come right back with new information over and over and over again. We just keep firing away. All right. So if you're new to this channel and you like what I'm doing here, by all means, go ahead and subscribe. I'll mention that probably one more time in the middle and at the end of the broadcast. So let's get busy and see what we can discover tonight. So February 3rd, 1929, the Victoria Black Wonders have organized for the 1929 season after a successful 1928 season. Selected as the manager was Willie Killebrew, with Jack Miller being retained as the captain. Members of the team include their famous pitcher, Black Baby, and pitcher Willie Heron, Charlie Craig Jr., Willie Lewis, and Charlie Little, to name a few of the guys on that team. What's interesting is this ball player named Willie Killebrew was selected as manager. What's interesting about that is because, would you believe there's a ball player named Wilbur Bullet Rogan, and there's never been another guy in the MLB, which would be an American National League, with the last name of Rogan. Check me out and see if I'm right. Wilbur Bullet Rogan. But, hey, I bet you didn't know there was a black baseball player named Killebrew. How about that? All right, someone associated with the Victoria Black Wonders out of Texas. All right, let's keep it going. February the 3rd, 1949, Bakersfield of the California League signed pitcher Cleophas A. Learight, their first African-American player. Learight, a former Canadian American League player, was obtained in a trade for a guy named Robert Muir, M-U-H-R. Yeah, so we're seeing some integration going on in 1949, people bringing in their first ever African-American player. All right, this is history, guys. All right, I see we got quite a few people on right now. And hey, if you enjoy these broadcasts, by all means, go ahead and subscribe and come back again. All right, so we're going to keep it going. February 3rd, 1979. So we're just jumping through the decades here. The Minnesota Twins dealt 7-time batting champion Rod Carew to the California Angels in exchange for 4 players. And those 4 players are people that, you probably don't know that much. Ken Landero, Paul Hartzell, Dave Engel, and Brad Havens. Right, none of those guys ended up being big stars, but certainly we know about Rod Carew. He's still with us today, and back on my shelf there, I have a book signed by Rod Carew. All right, one of his autobiography. Okay, and that was February 3rd, 1979. Rod Carew was traded to the California Angels, who are now the Anaheim Angels. If you're new to the baseball scene, all right, let's keep it going. All right, so we have February 3rd, 1961. Segregation was the topic of the day when Hank Aaron, Wes Covington, and Billy Bruton, who had recently been traded to Detroit, said they were not happy with their spring training accommodations. And they took issue with Milwaukee Vice President Bertie Tippett, and I used to have baseball cards of Bertie Tippett, who said that all players were happy with their accommodations. No, they weren't happy. The Negro players were housed in private rooming houses in Bradenton, Florida. And of course, the white guys were staying in the hotel. So Aaron said that the house was big enough for 4 players, but last year they had 8 to 10 players in the house. And these guys were also trying to bring their families down, and they couldn't bring their families down because if they did, now you have to try to find a place for your family. It was just a real struggle. And these rooming houses just couldn't handle these black ball players. Now, Tippett said that he would not push for all players to stay in the same place. So you know what that is, right? That's separate but equal. That's what he was saying. And other teams had done that, but he wasn't about to do that. He said, but he would find separate accommodations for his colored players or the colored players. And Tippett said they would continue to have a problem, talking about the Milwaukee team, as long as teams continue to train in the South. And this was 1961, guys. Jackie Robinson had broke the color barrier, man, 20 years before almost? And they were still going through problems with the segregation deal down in Florida. And they knew that they were going to have a problem, but they kept going back there. I was so happy that they did branch out and start going to Arizona, which was a whole different climate than Florida. And you think about it, boy, Florida is a pretty tough place right now as well. So anyway, somebody said that Ken Landreau sure played for the Dodgers. That's right. So, yep. And somebody said, hello from Tennessee. All right. From Nashville, or are you from a town around there? Yeah, I've been to Nashville and presented before. And if anybody's joining, let me know where you're joining from, guys. All right. I see Bob's in here tonight, and the Will's in here too. Those are two guys who really support me well. I appreciate them so much. And so we're going to keep it going, guys. All right. So if you like what I'm doing, and this is the 3rd time I've said it, go ahead and subscribe. All right. Okay. So we're going to go to, how about this? February 3rd. Let's see. February 3rd, 1977. The way was cleared yesterday, February the 2nd, and announced today, February 3rd, 1977, that Negro League players will be admitted to the Hall of Fame, making or staging the way for Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson. A special 10-man committee was formed by Commissioner Bowie Kuhn. The first player inducted will be announced next week. It will be Paige or Gibson. And it's kind of interesting what Bowie Kuhn said. He said they will not actually be members of the Hall of Fame. Listen to that, guys. They will not actually be members of the Hall of Fame. This is how it started out. All right. He said, I would not call it a compromise. The purpose here is to recognize the great contributions made by the Negro Leagues. Yeah, I call it definitely a compromise. We're going to put you in the Hall of Fame, but you're not going to be a member of the Hall of Fame. Sounds bizarre to me. And so anyway, they named a few of the other members of the committee. Of course, Eddie Gottlieb was on that committee, Monty Irvin, Judy Johnson. I don't know if Irvin was there at the very beginning. Roy Campanella was there from the beginning. And they also had a guy named Everett Barnes from the U.S. Olympic Committee, Sam Lacey, the sports writer. They had the owner of the New York Cubans, Alex Pompeyes, Wendell Smith, another sports writer, and the legendary baseball player Bill Yancey were part of that 10-member committee. All right. And that was announced February 3rd, 1970. What I say? That was actually 71. That wasn't 77. That was 71. All right. Because I just looking at my own work here. So here we go. Now we're going to jump to February 3rd, 1977. Okay. So after naming 9 top black players, the Committee on Negro League Baseball voted itself out of existence. And they said that they couldn't get 75% vote on any of these players that they had on their list. And Willie Foster came about the closest, but he didn't get the 75%. So they decided to disband themselves. And the last 2 players they put in were John Henry Lloyd and Martin Diego. And they were the last 2 people added. And so members of the committee at the end were Judy Johnson, Monty Irvin, Roy Campanella, Dick Young, the sports writer, a guy by the name of Joe Reichard, Frank Forbes, and Eddie Gottlieb, and a guy named Ippy Barnes. I don't know who Ippy Barnes was. That's an interesting name. Now, what's interesting here for me, really stands out, is that they disbanded the committee without putting Ruth Foster in. I mean, come on, guys. If not for Foster, you probably wouldn't even had Satchel Paige or Josh Gibson. But they couldn't put Ruth Foster in. Ruth Foster didn't get in until 1980. And guys, you know what has been since then. It was a struggle to get guys in. And when they disbanded, believe it or not, there was not a Western player who played in the old Negro League in the West, who played predominantly there, who was enshrined. So people like Bullet Rogan were not even considered. Willa Brown, I can go on and name quite a few players, but to leave and say you couldn't get 75% of the vote for Ruth Foster, and you only got a little bit of vote for his brother, who are both members of the Hall of Fame, or if you go back to what Bowie Kuhn said, they're not really members of the Hall of Fame, but I would beg to differ with that. So, boy, but times have really changed. And I know when I came up and I was following baseball, trying to make sense of all of this, a lot of this history did not make sense to me. And so I did my best to try to change it over the last 40 some odd years. I just rolled up my sleeve, didn't have the funding. I just went out there and just did the thing. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just out here still talking about black baseball and still hoping to get some other people in. John Donaldson, I'm pushing for him. Vic Harris, certainly pushing for him. Boy, I could give you some other ones too that I really think strongly about. And so one of these days, I'm going to give you my top 10 of Hall of Fame snubs from the Negro Leagues. All right. All right. So they disbanded. They started a committee on this day of 71 and then disbanded it in 77. How about that? So my last fact for today was a February 3rd, 1993. So an edition of the Omaha Daily Record announced that award-winning author Phil S. Dixon will address the Nebraska Wesleyan University Forum in Lincoln, Nebraska on Friday, February 5th at 10 o'clock a.m. in McDonald Theater. And that was 33 years ago from 2026. And guess what? That's me. I was out there 33 years ago, still giving presentations, and I'll be doing one this weekend. I'll come back and talk about that when I get back. So we'll talk about that one on Monday, okay? So we'll let the Super Bowl get through and all of that, and then we'll jump right back into baseball. Of course, pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting not too long from now, so we're going to talk about that too as well. So, guys, that kind of does. This is a short broadcast tonight, unless you had a question for me or something like that. Somebody says they're joining from Tennessee. I think I get a person from Tennessee quite a bit. I appreciate you joining in. I'm going to try to remember this name. Carolyn Reynolds, all right? Yeah, make sure you subscribe. And I'll lock that one in. Somebody says Hernandez, talking about, wow, that must be talking about me 33 years ago. What's interesting is I can go back to performances and speeches and talks that I was doing back, believe it or not, in 1980. Can you imagine that? 1980. I was like 23 years old and able to talk about the Negro Leagues. I don't know what I was saying, but I don't know what I was saying. But I do know one thing. I always had more knowledge than anyone else because I would go to ball players' homes. I would go out, meet their family. I would go out and eat with people. I would go to church with people. And so I learned a lot. But I did mine the old-fashioned way, which you roll up your sleeves and you go out and interview people. And then you come back and tell the stories. These guys now, let me tell you, I don't think they go anywhere. I think they get all their information offline, and that qualifies them to talk about it. And it depends on what you think about that. I know what I think about it, but it might be interesting to know what you think about it. Feel free to go out and talk to people. Talk to some of the families. Go visit some of the families, right? and talk to them. Some families have products that you can buy, T-shirts or different thing, books. Some of them have books, and you can buy these books and support some of these families because many of these guys they weren't able to leave their family, money like Ty Cobb did. I mean, who had investments in Coca Cola. Yeah, they weren't able to do that. So their families now are trying to keep their legacy alive, and with your help, it can happen. All right. So that kind of does it for me. Somebody says hello from California. All right then. Well, let's see, man. California. I usually talk a lot. I'm surprised I didn't have a fact today about the California Winter League because the Los Angeles White Sox are out there, and surprisingly, I don't have a basketball player who was a baseball player tonight either. So, but I did spend a lot of time on this segregation. The team, Hank Aaron and Wes Covington and Billy Bruton. Hey, are you ready for a story? I think I can give a story and then I will leave. All right. Or who wants to hear a story? Hit some hearts if you want to hear a story. Let me see if somebody's really listening. Just hit a heart or two. And let me know if you want to hear this story. Okay. All right. Here we go. So here's the story. I worked for the Kansas City Royals, and I was assistant director of public relations. And the person who hired me was John Shearholtz, and I'm going to call this Joe Burke. And Joe Burke had been the general manager with the old Washington Senators, and he had been with the Kentucky Colonels too in the American Association. And he was an older guy. Shearholtz, he didn't talk a lot. When you went in to talk to Shearholtz or you try to negotiate something, you have something, he almost had that poker face. So you never knew if he was excited about what you were saying or he didn't like it. He just had that face that you couldn't tell where he was going to come from next. But Joe Burke was a different kind of story. So I would go in, I would talk to Joe Burke. And one day we were talking about integration. And Joe Burke told me that they had the players with the Senators in separate quarters. And so they were staying in black rooming houses when they went to spring training and even sometime when they were on the road. So he said that the Senators decided that they were going to move all the players together. And he said the problem was some players didn't want to leave the boarding house because they said, hey, when we were at the boarding house and or either living with other black families who would room out part of their home for these ball players, he said, they fed them well. They were around people. They got to meet people in the community. And so they became part of a family when they were in these boarding houses. Now, in a hotel, you know how it is. You go to the hotel, you see the hotel people, but you really don't know them. You see the hotel workers, you might say hi or, make my bed or something, but you don't really know them. But when they lived in these homes, they got to know people. And Joe Burke said that one of the most difficult problems was convincing some players to leave the boarding houses and come to the hotel. Also, he said that the people who they were staying with, this had become a way of earning an income. So when they were going to have to go to the hotels, then they were going to put these people out of business who had been supporting them when they couldn't stay anywhere else. And so Joe Burke, we talked about that, and he told me that it was a difficult task trying to move some of the black ball players to the hotels from the boarding house. And most people would never think of it that way. You would figure, okay, I'd rather stay in a hotel than a boarding house. But it was not the case. And I know here in Kansas City, there was a famous hotel called the Mulebach Hotel. And the Yankees stayed at the Mulebach Hotel. But when they picked up Elston Howard, the Mulebach wouldn't let Elston Howard stay at the hotel. And that was downtown Kansas City. The hotel is still there. It's part of I'm trying to think of what it is now. It's part of the Marriott now. But yeah, so when Elston Howard couldn't stay there, they moved across to Kansas City, Kansas, and stayed at the Townhouse Hotel, which is in my hometown. I could walk to the Townhouse from where I was. And the Yankees stayed at the Townhouse Hotel in Kansas City, Kansas, because Elston Howard wasn't allowed to stay with the team in the Mulebach Hotel in Kansas City, Missouri. So that's two different twists on the integration story that you probably haven't heard before. All right, then. So let me see. Somebody said that, right, Hank Aaron said the hostess where he stayed was very hurt when he joined the team during spring training. I believe that. Yeah, that was the story. And I got that straight from Joe Burke, who was the general manager of the Kansas City Royals. I had some great conversation with Joe Burke. He really liked to talk old school baseball, but the only one in the whole organization that could talk old school baseball was this young black kid named Phil Dixon. And so he used to call me in the office and he'd tell me a few stories. One of these days, I'll tell you my best Joe Burke story. So, yeah, Joe, I'm sure Joe's passed away now. And of course, you probably know who John Shearholtz is. John Shearholtz came to the Royals from Baltimore. He had been a school teacher in Baltimore, and he ended up becoming general manager. So, anyway, guys, that kind of gives you a little bit of idea of some of the things that bounce around in my head that I'm able to share with you. A few stories that you won't get anywhere else. But that's the part of the fun of listening to one of my broadcasts. I'm likely to say things that you typically won't hear, things that actually probably need to be written in books. And I just haven't gotten around to writing all these things. But if you read some of my books, you will see that I do pour a lot into my preface and my introduction that gives you a little background about who I am. Somebody says Lulu Gibson, Lulu Gibson, hear name. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, Lulu Gibson. I'm not sure what that means. Bradenton. Okay, I see somebody mentioned Bradenton. So that, guys, that does it for me. So I'm going to go and retire for tonight and get prepared for tomorrow. And like I said, I've got a speaking engagement this weekend, so I'll be coming back talking about that. Probably share some pictures on a reel or something like that. Hey, remember you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Negro League Man. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter or X at Negro League Man Phil S. Dixon. Or you can follow me on Facebook, Negro League Author Phil S. Dixon. And how about this? I even have my own webpage, which is nlbalive.com. And guess what? Last night I put an item on there. It's an uncut sheet from my 1987 baseball card set, which is very rare, but somebody might want to have one of those and get it framed up. So I put that on there last night. Also, I put a photograph from the 1924, what they call, quote, Color World Series between Hilldale and the Kansas City Monarchs. And it is autographed by Judy Johnson, another rare autograph. Now, you may have a Judy Johnson autograph, but I guarantee you, you won't find many of these, right? All right, so somebody said Jim Pendleton was Aaron's roommate too. Hey, yep. Well, they had some great players there in Milwaukee for a while. I'm telling you, that's why they went to the World Series, right? Was that 1958? I'm checking my memory right now. I think it was 58. So anyway, guys, thank you. This has been the February 3rd, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. It's been my pleasure to bring you information like this tonight, and I hope to see you again. If you like what I'm doing, go ahead and subscribe, guys. We're getting closer and closer to 600 subscribers, and people said, hey, you will never get all the subscribers you want by doing just lives. Man, hey, I'm halfway there because I'm going for 1,000. I'm halfway there. But when we hit 1,000, guys, I'm going to do a lot of videos and things like that. So we're working on those now and putting them in the can. And so we're going to get even more exciting. But I will continue to come back with these lives because it gives me an opportunity to actually talk to you and you to talk to me if you wish to. All right. So thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening, and I will see you again tomorrow. This is Phil Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History.